So in this lesson, we're going to discuss the difference between the main three options available to you to work with curtain wall systems within Revit. So you can see here on my screen, I have three in place. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first one here. So this first piece of glass essentially is my curtain wall. The second one is considered my exterior glazing. And this last one is considered the storefront system. Now to access those, it's just like drawing any type of a wall in Revit. It's right here underneath your wall button. So if I clicked on wall and I went to my drop down in my properties window and I go to the very bottom of this drop down, you'll see those are my three options I just pointed out to you. Now the main difference between the three is mainly you can actually see what the difference is. So with this one here, this particular panel is our storefront system. It has the glass in place, but it also, when I highlight this and I tab over, you see that dashed line? Those are my grid lines. Those are actually in place before we get mullions in place. So we lay out our grids and then we attach mullions to them. So what this has, it has the glass, it has mullions, and it has grid lines. And those are the three main elements that separate these three options. So again, those three elements: grid lines, mullions, and glass panels. And the storefront system is the one option you have available to you that has all three. So if I go to the second option here and I scroll in just a little bit, you see we definitely have glass. That's one element we have, but we also have our grid lines. So those are the main two that this one has. So the storefront system actually has glass and grid lines, and we can actually still, manipulate and move the grid lines however we want to, and then attach mullions to them. Now this system here, only glass, and this one actually provides us with the most flexibility in terms of how we want to lay things out. So you can kind of look at this as a blank slate or a blank canvas here, and you can lay out your grid lines and then attach mullions to them. So that's going to be the main difference between the three. And one more difference that might not be obvious because you really can't see it here is the behavior when you're actually working with this. So, and that's the automatically embed option. So when you're working with the storefront system, this one, when I click it and I go to the edit type here, that automatically embed option is part of the default. It's checked. So it's always going to be like that. But if I come to any of these guys here and I go back to edit type, you'll see that that automatically embed is not there. Same thing with this one. No automatically embed. And so what that means is I can already have a wall in place. And if there's a wall, I can actually draw over this wall, maybe in plan view, and Revit will automatically calculate the opening, draw the opening, and place the system within here. So there's no trimming, no cutting, no deleting. All I have to do is draw within a wall, and Revit was smart enough to automatically place that in there. And that's because that automatically embed option is, checked. Now you might not, that won't work necessarily initially when you're drawing these into a wall system, unless you go into the edit type, check that embed automatically, and then it'll behave just like a storefront system. But if you do not check that embed, this will actually be hidden inside the wall, and it could be a little bit challenging trying to figure things out. But we'll kind of run into those issues a little bit later once we kind of go over each one of these wall systems in detail. So as I kind of mentioned, when you're working with these, they behave just like any other wall system. You've got some parameters. You got base offset. We'll check it out here. A level, base offset, top constraint, top height. All the things you would expect when working with any kind of a wall system, you have that kind of control here. And you also have the ability, almost regardless of the form you have in place, to attach or detach to the base or bottom of any element, just like when you're working with any wall system. So again, that's the three main differences, including one little extra bonus difference between these three. Again, the main difference: storefront system has grid lines, mullions, and glass panels already in place, but you can go in here and edit type and adjust the parameters, which we'll learn how to do in following lessons. And with this exterior glazing, really only thing we have in place is our grid lines. That's the only thing we have in place. And you can see there's nothing there. And then for our glass, lastly but definitely not least, there's really, it's our blank slate, our blank canvas. So it gives us the most flexibility. And then also, these two do not automatically embed into your wall system. Only the storefront system will automatically embed. Now, these can if you check that within your Edit Type button. So, kind of going over that, keep these thoughts in your mind as we work through the following lessons. So, in the next lesson, we're going to jump into working with our storefront system first, since we have all of our elements in place, and we'll learn how to play with some of the parameters and elements within our Edit Type window. So, to begin, we could start off here with this little portion of a building I have. We're going to use this to kind of do some experimenting. And if I wanted to get my curtain wall system in place, real easy to do. It's just like drawing any kind of a wall in Revit. Take away the fact that there's aluminum or steel and there's glass and little clips and parts. Essentially, the behavior is the same as a wall. I can draw it the same. I can move it the same. I can highlight it and change it the same. I can go in and change the structure and parameters, and I can use the same grip to make adjustments to height and things like that. So if I wanted to draw my storefront system, we'll say in the case here we already have a wall in place. This is kind of what I mentioned to you in the last lesson. We'll come to this area here, and if I wanted to draw, I'm going to change our color here so things look a little better. Our curtain wall system, all I need to do is actually come over here to wall. We'll go down to there, storefront, highlighted, it's right there, so we're in good shape. In our options bar, we've got a number of little tools here. We can set the height, even the depth. Not sure why you'd want to set a depth there, but you could set a height. We can unconnect it, or we can make it automatically snap to certain levels, just like any other wall we've worked with so far. But we also can define things like offsets, any kind of radiuses and things like that. So if I want to get this guy placed, I'm going to do it within a wall. And if you remember from the last lesson, because I have automatically embed checked, and it's also checked by default, I can come over this wall and draw over it. And I'm not going to get that warning signal that tells me that I have two overlapping building elements in place. Because what happens is, drawing that wall in place automatically embeds it inside that wall system, creating the cuts I need to fit this guy within that opening. So if I jump to my 3D view, you can see, like that, we have our curtain wall system in place. And as I mentioned last lesson, it has all our elements. It has our panels, and I'm hovering over and just tabbing. So you see it has my curtain panel. I can, you see here, hovering over here, I didn't even have to tab. It has my mullion, and it actually tells me the size and the type, the shape. And then if I do tab, I can get my grid line here, and I can, snap those around and move those as I want to. And if I continue to tab even more, I can highlight this whole system and do what I want to do with it. So as I mentioned, the behavior is a lot like what you expect when working with any wall. So I have the system highlighted at the moment, and I can change it with the scripts, and it automatically cuts inside that wall, which is very helpful. And it takes a lot of detail work and trimming out of making adjustments to this. So, and it also makes change and working with change a lot easier as well. As you know, clients' needs change, their minds change, designs change and evolve. This helps that process and makes it less tedious when we do have to make those changes. So I'm not only limited to my stretch functions, I can come down here to level 1, and I already have it highlighted here, and I know it's highlighted because I can see my dashed line, and I know it's my entire system because I have it looks like a giant eye basically. So it's a dashed line going across here, down the middle, all the way down here. That lets me know I have my whole system highlighted. But if I wanted to, I can hit my move button, and in plan view, I can even move these as well. And you see what happens? It shows up nicely in a floor plan, and when I jump back to my 3D view, it trims it out nicely and allows me to move. So, really easy to work with, the storefront system is. Has a lot of the elements already in place, and as I mentioned, the behavior is exactly like any type of wall you may have ever worked with. So, if I did want to come in here and make a few changes, well, how much flexibility do we have with this? Well, let's take a look. I can click on this, and just like other elements within Revit, if I go to Edit Type, I can now access its properties, and I can make all the changes I want, or basic changes. One being for my mullions, my grid, and also panels, which all three of those main elements you'll have within this area here. So if I did want to make a change, or I did want to create my own different type of curtain wall system, and I wanted to preserve this one, I'm just going to hit duplicate. I'm going to rename this one. We could call this one storefront, and I'm going to name it something obvious that makes sense. So right now the spacing is 5 by 8. So let's say we wanted it to be exactly square. We could say 5 foot by 5 foot. So, oops, wrong notation. Make sure I get that right notation in there. So 5 foot by 5 foot. Oops. So it lets me know what I have here, and now I can make changes, and I still have the original one that came with Revit. It's still preserved. So let's see what happens if we wanted to make some changes to some of the spacing. So that's the great thing about the storefront system. So a lot of the extra work is cut out, and really you're just going to play with some parameters. So like our name says here, 5 by 5, I can come in here and change the spacing on any one of these I wanted to, but I'm going to do it here under the horizontal area. So I can come here and say 5 feet. I'll say OK, and you'll notice it automatically updates in there. So I now have a curtain wall system that's 5 by 5, as well as the one that we have access to that's already in our system. So when I go back down to my drop down, remember initially we had 3 curtain wall systems. Well, because I customized this one, or I duplicated it, renamed it, customized it, we now have another one, my storefront 5 by 5. So every time you duplicate, rename, and create a new one, it's going to end up down here. So you'll have plenty to have access to. So that's going to be something important for you to keep in mind. So just like other wall systems as well, I can click on my wall system, and I can also change some of the height stuff within our properties window. So we could set our base constraints just like before with any wall. We could do our offsets. We can even do our top constraints. So right now I just have a simple unconnected height, so it's really not set to any level. But if I did want this to only stop at level 2, I can come in here and say up to level 2, and that window would automatically stop and go back up to level 2. Pretty cool stuff, pretty easy to work with, and it's just like any other wall system we've worked with. So we'll keep those in mind. Those are going to be the main things you're going to work with. So in the next lesson, we're still going to work with this storefront system, and we're going to play around with manipulating some of the panels. We'll learn how to change the color, and we'll also play around with a few more parameters within this storefront system. So I'll meet in place. I want to make some more adjustments to it. So I'm going to go ahead and click this guy, and I'm going to move it on up to the 4th level here. And what you notice is we can see the floors. Now, pretty sure you know this, but if you wanted to go ahead and add a spandrel panel within this, you actually can. We can change the color of the panel. We can keep it simple and do that. And we can also adjust the layout of our grid here. So I'm going to first do that, because what I want to happen is I want my 5 by 5s to be here. But when it comes to this area, 5 by 5s where I can have them, but when it comes to these areas where I need to actually place my spandrel, I want to take care of that. So I'm going to jump to my left view, double click on this. Oops, don't want to mess with the profile. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select it, tab till I get my entire system in place. I'm going to go to architecture, and I'm going to go ahead and add a grid. So I'm going to go grid, and what I want to do is I want to add a grid to go just along this area, along this area, and along this area, just so we can darken out the panels that will then exist. Now when you're laying your grid with the inside your curtain system here, if you hover over and you're on a vertical area, what you're going to get is your horizontal dashed line, and that dashed line is going to represent where you're going to place your mullion. If I hover over a horizontal element, the vertical comes. So keep that in mind as you're placing this. So we'll work with here. So we're going to click on this guy, and I'm just going to place my first one. And you see how that mullion automatically comes in there? That's because I have the storefront system. I'm working with that. So I still want to move that up. So I'm just going to click that, which is going to highlight that grid. I'm going to hit my move button, and I'm going to grab this point, and I want to move it to there. See that? That's how that works really nicely. Easy stuff. So let's do the same thing one more time, or a couple more times for up here. And actually we could probably just simply go with a height change here. But again, I'm going to highlight my grid, my curtain wall system. I'm going to go to there. I'm going to go to curtain grid, and I'm going to add another one. Place it here, and we might as well place another one there. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make that quick change. Hover over any one of the mullions you just placed, tab until you see the dashed line, move button, and I can then move this up. And I can see I still want to move it up just a little bit more. There we go. And we'll do the same thing for this last one just up here. So I can come here, tab till I see the dashed line, move button, grab at a point that I can snap to, and a point that I can snap to up here. So now what we did, we added our own grid lines, and we manipulated this a little bit so that we could go in here and darken out and change the color of the panels so that we don't see, what's going on with this floor edge or mechanical equipment or anything that might not be that pleasing to the eye that the designer might not want anyone seeing from street level. So we've taken care of getting these panels in place. So now I can hover over any of the panels we just placed. So I'll do that. See that small one we placed right there? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my edit type, and I'm going to show you something. I didn't click this pin, and that's for a reason. I can't duplicate this one. So if I'm going to make a change to this, I may want to duplicate it and use it again later. So what I can do is I can tab over like we've been doing. I'll select that pin and unpin this guy. Go to edit type. I'm going to duplicate this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this spandrel panel. I'll say OK. And now that that's taken care of, it's right there. I can come now to my material and change some properties. So right now, by default, we're in the glass area here. I'm going to assume that our spandrel is going to be made of glass, but the transparency is going to be just nothing. So if I wanted to make another material that isn't glass, I can do it if I wanted to. But I'm just going to go off of what we have in place here. And I'm going to highlight my glass. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say duplicate material. And I'm going to rename this one spandrel panel. Now what I'll do is I'll come to my appearance here. I'm going to make some quick adjustments. So actually we'll go to graphics and do that. So if I wanted to, first thing I want to do is I want to change my color. I want to darken this up just a bit. So if we wanted to change color on any of our panels, we could do so pretty easily by clicking on this, and I can choose a color that's going to work for me. In this case, I want to darken it out pretty good. So I also want to come to the appearance and do the same thing. So I can come to appearance, custom, color. We'll get our swatch back up, and I'll say that. I'll say apply and OK. So let's go back one more time. I'm going to click on my little box here. Now what we need to do is we'll actually go back. We'll hit OK. And let's take a look at what we just did. That way we can know where we need to go next. So you can see we've definitely changed the color of our panel, but I could still see through it. I could still see that floor edge. So let's change the transparency. So again, hover over, tab, select it, edit type, go to the material again. And this time we're set to 75 on transparency. Let's turn that baby all the way down. I'm going to say apply and OK. Apply and OK. And now we've blackened that out. So now you can't see any undesired elements from street level. I can see what's going on in the building, but I don't see all the mechanical wiring and equipment that may be a little unpleasing depending on your design intent. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. So now that we've created one there, I can tab until I get to this panel, deselect it. And you notice once it's pinned, I really can't do much here. But if I go like this and unpin it, I can now go to my drop down, and we're going to locate that spandrel panel we just created, and I'm going to replace that one. So I'm going to do the same thing going all the way around. We'll tab to select, unpin, go to your properties drop down, and let's select the spandrel panel we created. And let's do let's do it one more time. Repetition will definitely help make it sync. I'm just going to tab until I see my panel highlighted. And if it doesn't highlight, just go to the mullion down below. You should get it then. Unpin, go to my properties drop down here, and select the panel we just created. Now I'm going to hit escape, kind of back out a little bit, and you see what we've just done. We've done two things. We changed the color, and we also adjusted the transparency. So one more cool thing I'm going to show you we can do within our system here. See if we can locate it here. It's probably not within this window, but it's probably within certain panels. So maybe this one just needs to be a single panel. I can, again, tab. Anywhere my spandrels are, I might not want 2 panels. So I can go to Edit Type. I can come here back to my material. And there's a couple of things you can do here. So there's an area here where we can adjust sheets of glass. Now, if you didn't know it was here, you'd probably think it was something more about appearance, but it's this area here. I can tell Revit how many sheets of glass I need. So I think you have the option to actually come in here, and when I hover over this, it says adjust the number of panes. So for a double pane, you set the value to 2. So by default, all these glasses are double pane. Enter a number between 1 and 6. So we can do single pane all the way up to 6, which is a little overkill, but we have that option. But for this one particular panel, I might want it to be just 1. So I can get rid of that value. I'll say 1. I'll say OK, and you saw that bar adjust. And I'll say apply and OK. And it should have applied to the rest of these as well. So I'm going to highlight, tab till I get to my small panel, and I'm going to see if that property exists within this one. So we'll go to Appearance, and you'll see 1 panel. So the key is, if you know how you want this design and layout, go ahead and make all your changes, place the panel where you want. Then you could go to the areas in between the mullions or in the grid pattern or whatever, and you can then take the panel that you made all the changes to, that you created, that you spent all the time with, and all you're doing is selecting, unpinning, and going to a drop down to flip out the type of panel. So it's really helpful stuff. This will help you out, especially if you're working with some high-rise buildings where you might need to hide what's going on at each level. Now, you're not just limited to using the black color. You can use any of those colors that were on that swatch. But if you wanted to control the amount of visibility through that particular panel, mess with your transparency like we did. So I'm excited to be able to show you this one. So this is some of the in and outs of working with your curtain panel system. So there's one more thing I want to show you with this storefront, and that's adding doors. So as you know, there's really no doors in place here. So I'm going to show you a trick in our previous lesson where we kind of place these individually one at a time. Now, if you're doing a really large project, that could really eat up a lot of your time. So the great thing is you can actually work with selecting multiple elements, unpinning, and doing all that stuff. And really all you got to use is your control key to work with the select multiple. You just got to know how to work it. So I'll show you that really quick. That's going to be really important, especially if you're working with large systems. And I'd hate for you to go through one at a time and do this painstakingly. So let's work a little smarter in this case. So like we've been doing, I'm just going to highlight over an element close to the panel I want to work with. I'm going to tab till I see that panel is highlighted. I'll click it and I'll unpin it. So now, without clicking or pushing anything else, I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to hover over my next area where close to my panel. I'll tab till I see that panel highlighted. But before I do anything or click anything, I'm going to press Control, which will bring up my plus sign you might be able to see on and off there, which is going to allow me to select multiple. I'll select it. I won't hold down Control or anything, and I'm just going to unpin it. So now I'm just moving my mouse around just with one hand. I'm not touching anything else. So the key is right before you select your panel, hit Control. So again, let's finish this out. Tab, Control, pick, unpin. Tab, Control, pick, and unpin. And now, since we've unpinned all 4 of these, we can now come to our properties, go to the drop down, and select that spandrel panel that we created. And I'm going to hit Escape to clear out of my command, and voila, we've got it placed. So you don't have to do it one at a time. So you can do the select multiple. Thought that was really important, and I'd hate for you to go through the headache of thinking you have to do one at a time. So let's get a door in this place. So to get a door in our panel, unfortunately, when we're making these, they don't automatically come with a door. That would be nice to already have, but there's a workaround for that. So I'm going to highlight over the area I would like to have a door, and I'm going to tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace this panel with a door. That easy. But we just have to select it, unpin it. We're going to go to Edit Type. We're going to load, and I'm going to look for doors. And you'll see 3 of them here that are related to curtain walls. We want any one of these. So I just want a single door in that place. I'll say Open. I'll say OK. I'll kind of back out a little bit, and you'll notice we got the door in there, but that's door for a munchkin or an elf or something. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and make an adjustment to this placement of this mullion or this grid here. So I'm going to select this. But I'm going to make sure I select my grid line because that's what's going to control what moves my mullion. So there's my grid line. I'll select it. I'll unpin it. I'll move it. And the rest of the mullions will actually move with me. I just need to specify the distance that I want to move it. So I'll grab it anywhere and we'll just move our mouse up. We'll say type in 2 feet and it should make that adjustment for me, and it did. And we're not done yet. We still have this bottom little trip hazard here, this mullion at the bottom. So I'm going to tab here. I don't want anybody to trip getting into this building, so I'm going to select it, unpin it, delete it, and now we have a door in place. So again, you could play, depending on the size of your door, you can adjust by playing with your grids and manipulate like we did when we moved it up. Do the exact same thing with the vertical ones. So we have our door in place. We learn how to kind of do multiple spandrels here. So one more thing I'm going to show you is we're not just stuck working with this rectangular shape. We can actually adjust the profile of this opening, and Revit will fill in the blanks for us. So if I wanted to come here, I can do that. I can go to this view here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight until I get over my entire system, and I'm going to tab until I see those dashed lines. You see it's highlighted. Now double click on your curtain wall system. So now we can edit our profile because our lines are appearing here. So if I wanted to, all I need to do is click this up. This actually might not be a good idea. We can drop it down because there's going to get a little too high up there on the roof. So we'll come over here and I'm just going to adjust my profile. Make something kind of unique. So I just need to remove constraints. We can grab this line, and I purposely kind of made it off so you can see that you do have that option. So now I have this really funky looking shape here. I'll hit my green check mark and check that out. Made a really cool looking opening right there. And it didn't have to be a square or a rectangle. So this is pretty much everything you're going to need to know to work with these storefront systems. So they're pretty easy to work with, very user friendly, fun. I find there are ways you can manipulate and kind of customize it, but it's it's a time saver as well. So there might be designs that require a system kind of like this. So I'm excited to be able to go over this with you and show you this. So this is working with your storefront system. So in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at our exterior glazing. So let's turn our attention to working with the exterior glazing. So if I rotate around, our next type of curtain wall system we're going to learn to work with was actually this one here. Now, as I mentioned, behavior is the same as a wall. Only difference between what we've just worked with and the one we're getting ready to work with is this one just has the grid lines already in place for us. So I'm going to tab around. So the grid lines are already in place. You can see them there. And the cool thing about this is you could still kind of flex around and mess with certain elements, and as you're moving around your grid line, your panels get put in place. So let's see what happens when we try to draw this into a wall. So if you remember and you recall, it's going to be really important for us to make sure that we have this on automatically embed. So let's jump to the first floor plan real quick. And I'm just going to bring this wall over. We'll mirror it. So I'll say mirror, and we'll just place our system on that wall. And I'm just going to get rid of the system we have here because we really don't need it. So go back to 3D view. So if I wanted to take this system here, which is our exterior glazing, we go back to floor plan here, and I go to wall, architectural, go down to the bottom, we'll say exterior glazing. If I do try to draw this within my wall system here, I get this warning that I kind of mentioned before. It tells me that the highlighted walls overlap, and basically I need to embed this system here within this wall. So what does that look like? Well, let's get out of here. I'll jump to my 3D view. You notice there's no system here. So if I click on it, there it is. It's actually kind of hidden inside there. And if you switched your view here to a wireframe view, you'd also see it as well. So the key is making sure that's set to automatically embed. So if I jump to my edit type, go to automatically embed, apply, OK, and I go back to my color view here, you can see it's automatically embed. So it's going to be important. You can select your automatically embed before you draw it in, or if you already have it in and you forget, just go back, edit type, go in there and check automatically embed. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward, right? So let's see how we can kind of play around and manipulate these things. So we'll select this wall system. I'm going to go to Edit Type. And you can see, because there's really no mullions in place, we have none here. So, but we do have our grids. So pretty much this window here will tell the story of each curtain system we're working with. So right now it's set to curtain panels. There's none. In the drop down, we can add whatever we wanted to here. Well, we'll do that in just a moment. Well, I'm more concerned with messing with these grid lines. So like we did with the curtain system, we can play around with the spacing here. So vertical grid, here we can say 8 feet. And that'll be our vertical. And we'll do the same thing here. 8 and 12. Oh, we'll say 8 feet. And we'll say apply and OK. See what that did? And all I did was just mess around with our grids here. Now, if I wanted to get mullions in place, there's a couple of things I can do. So let's go back to this property here. We can go to our Edit Type, and I can come in here, and in this drop down, I can add whatever I want. So, as I mentioned in previous lessons, we got a number of shapes we can choose from, but with Revit and parametric ability, we can actually create families that we can later load into the project like this. But we'll go with what we have in the box since we're kind of working with these box items first. So this one, I'm going to call it, let's say we wanted to, go with this 2.5 by 2.5 by 5. So I'm just going to bring that in for all my verticals. I'm going to say apply and OK, and boom, mullions are in place, right? We can go back and do the same thing for our horizontals if we wanted to. Just simply go into that drop down. But that's a little bit tedious, a lot of extra clicks. There is a tool you can use to actually get this taken care of pretty quickly. So if I'm in the Architecture tab, you'll notice here underneath my Build panel, I have a couple of options for my curtain wall. I have Curtain Wall System, I have Curtain Grid, and I also have Mullion. So if I wanted to add a grid, I can use this to add an extra grid line. If I wanted to do a system here, I can actually, this will probably work really well, on a massing situation. And if I wanted to just add a mullion, take a grid and turn it to a mullion, this will be the tool I use. So let's try it. So I'm going to click on mullion, and now all I need to do is if I hover over and I click on my grid line, it automatically turns that to a mullion. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward stuff. So you could see, the benefit of working with this one here. Let's kind of orbit around. Let's get this top one here. So again, if you want to add a mullion, just kind of a little repetition. Architecture tab, mullion button, and make sure you select your grid line, and you see the dash line, and your mullion is put in place. Easy stuff. So what I'd like to do now is kind of go around and see what else we can do. So just like the storefront system, we can actually play with the profile of this. So I'm going to go check a look at this guy in straight on view. I'm just going to tab over my wall here till I get the whole system highlighted. Double click it, and we can also adjust its profile. So we can go remove constraints. And I'll green check mark, and it'll automatically update. Now you'll notice something, just like with the storefront system, it's the same thing. When you hover over the wall we just adjusted, you'll notice that rectangle is still there by the dashed lines that are really close together. You could see the original form right here. But it's still, although that's in place, it still models out the change we made. So that's, that comes in handy. So you can definitely still edit the profile even when you're working with that one. So, and again, if you want to come in here and want to change a color or panel or color some panels, just simply tab till you get the panel you want. Let's say we want a different color for these top panels. Again, we'll select it, edit type, we'll come in here, change its material. Actually, we could probably go with the material that we already have. We'll go with our spandrel system, and we'll blacken that out. So we'll do the same thing to the top. And again, its technique is exactly the same. Just tabbing, finding the location, or the panel we want to actually manipulate. Just going to tab till I select it. I don't think that was it. That might be it. Yep, that is. So now I can, again, come in here, change the color, and manipulate all the properties I want to. So really the main difference, as I mentioned, with the exterior glazing in the storefront is grids are already, or some grids are already in place, but no mullions. So if I wanted to add more grids, I just need to go here to curtain grid. Let's draw one in. Draw a couple in if you wanted to. And we'll turn those to mullions. So we'll go mullion, boom, and boom. And it even divided up this area here. So you've got some flexibility. Really still very user-friendly, easy to work with. But that's how you're going to work with your exterior glazing. So we know how to draw, we know how to move, we know how to adjust a profile. We can get our mullions in place, and we know we have the option to change the type of mullions we're working with. So lastly but not least, for our in-box curtain wall systems, our curtain wall family that comes within Revit, I should say, we're going to take a look at our curtain wall here, and we're going to create a whole new panel, basically from just a simple, gigantic sheet of glass. And I'll show you how we can quickly create our own curtain wall system using the tools we've used for both of these elements. So I'll meet you in the next lesson.